Hi everybody, I'm Chris Freihofer. I'm a casting director.
Hello, my name is Jennifer Rader. I'm a casting associate and actress.
And we're going to talk to you today about self-taping and what you can do to improve your self-tapes, set up your own studio, and do it affordably. Now, we spend in casting a lot of our time watching self-tapes from actors. She watches a lot of them. What can you say are some of the biggest mistakes?
Some of the biggest mistakes are lighting faults, bad framing, mic issues, sound, not following instructions to a T.
So we're going to tell you how to do that cheaply, effectively, and we're going to show you the difference between good and bad. Okay, now we're going to throw a lot of ideas at you today and include a lot of equipment. Some of it may be expensive, some of it is cheap. Don't feel like you have to buy any of this stuff. We're going to show you ways to also make the best of what you have available to you on a budget. And especially if you're on the road, you're on vacation or something, you have an audition that pops up, what you can do in your hotel room to make the most of your self-tape. Now, the first thing you have to consider is what you're going to use to capture your video. Now, today we're using a camcorder. It's a nice little HD camcorder. I say little. This is $1,000, and it captures great video and great sound, but you may not have that in your budget. You can use a DSLR camera, still camera that can shoot on movie mode. That's, attachable lenses and that kind of thing. Or you can even use what's in your pocket, your phone. But if you're going to use your phone to capture your video, and it takes great video, you need to orient your phone horizontally, not vertically. No one wants to watch an audition video that's oriented vertically. This isn't TikTok or Instagram. This is an audition, and our computer screens are oriented horizontally. This will maximize the size of your face and your eyes so we can focus on that. If you send it to us vertically, and some casting directors won't even accept vertical videos, if you send it to us vertically, it's going to letterbox on the side, and it makes your head and face really small. Don't do it. Right, Jen?
That's right.
Now, once you figure out what you're going to use to capture your video, you got to figure out what you're going to use to put your camera on. You're going to need some kind of mount, some kind of tripod to get it stable. Now, we use, at the studio here, we use these kind of prosumer tripods. They're a little bit more than what you'd normally get at Best Buy, but they're less than what you would need on a film shoot because you don't need the fluid head. You can spend a lot of money on tripods to get this fluid head. This one isn't really that fluid, but you can spend $1,000 or more on just this head. You don't need that because an audition video is going to be still. You do need, however, height, and a lot of tripods don't go high enough. You'll spend $25, $35, $40 on a tripod, and it will only get to about this high. You need it to get at least the same height as your eyes. And this one, we like this one because it gets super tall. It'll get about 7 feet tall. You don't need that much unless you're 7 feet tall. The tripod will come with some kind of mount. And depending on what kind of camera you're using, you screw that mount into the bottom of the camera, and then it'll set on the tripod. If you're using a phone, there are these handy little mounts, and the phone just clips right in, and then it'll go on top of the tripod, just like that. And see, my orientation is horizontal, not vertical. Okay, you have what you're going to put your camera on and how tall it's going to be. Now you got to figure out where to point it and what's going to be your background. This is a very common mistake. A lot of people have a window or a lamp or something in the background. You don't have to have a solid background. You just want to make sure it's lit properly. Now, we here at the studio, we have a backdrop that we got at a photo studio, and we hang it on a curtain. And that's kind of this cloudy thing. It's a gray. It's not a solid color.
Now, if you don't have access to photo equipment, you can use general things around the house. A shower curtain, a blanket. I've used a bed sheet in the past. You can even find a good wall that has a lot of lighting and natural light. Make sure the wall isn't too glossy or you're going to get a lot of shine in the background and it could be a little bit distracting.
Now, behind our curtain, we have a blue wall. We used to use the blue wall all the time, and our videos were kind of known for having this bright blue wall. However, when it came to drama, really doesn't lend itself to drama. And a lot of people use this blue color or the chroma key green color, and I would really advise against that. Don't use those colors in your background. I would keep it simple, muted. White, gray, darker colors, that kind of thing. Now here we have a white background, which is just a board put up on a couple of chairs, as you can see. But the problem with white is that, look at me, I look really dark and it's kind of weird because these cameras have trouble focusing on that. Now the next common mistake that people make is lighting. We often see a lot of self-tapes with terrible lighting, right Jen?
Right.
So you want to make sure the lighting is in front of you and not on top of you or behind you. And a lot of people use this little handy device, a ring light. You might have one at home. And a lot of actors use this for ring lights. And I'll tell you, if you have one, throw it away. Get rid of it. It's a waste of money. It's terrible for self-tapes. In fact, I even have in our self-taping instructions that we send to actors not to use a ring light. Ring lights are great if you're shooting from the waist up, Instagram, instructional video or how-to video, something like that, cooking. Those are great. But when we're getting into these tight shots that an audition would be, it's too close for these ring lights and it makes your eyes look crazy. Let's take a look. Okay, here's Jennifer and we are lighting her with a ring light and a little bit of backlight. And if you can see, her eyes look like devil eyes because they are a reflection, your eyes are a mirror, and when we get closer to her pupils, you will see that her pupils have disappeared because of this ring light and it looks a little bit crazy. And we can get rid of this by getting your ring light on eBay, getting your money back on it, and getting different kinds of lights. So if you want to do this right, you need to get some lights, some actual lights. And you can get them pretty cheaply now. Now some people get the soft boxes, you know, the big boxes with the cloth in them. You put some light bulbs in there. The thing is, those are really cumbersome and you're constantly replacing light bulbs because they're very fragile and they break a lot. I used to use them, I don't anymore. They look really cool though. What we use now instead are these LED lights. And they have a lot of controls on the back. You can control the intensity, and then you can even put gels in them. You don't need them, just use the white light. But these never burn out. They're super lightweight. You can get them now online for probably about $100 for 2 of them, and you get stands to go with it too. Again, you don't have to purchase this, but if you want to up your self-tape game, and self-tapes aren't going anywhere, you're going to need to consider some kind of lights. Now, even I have some of these that I purchased, and these are just little tabletop LED lights. They're USB powered. They're controllable. You got a level control here. They do come with little gels. I use these for Zoom meetings, any kind of Skype callback, anything like that. It's great to have on the tabletop in front of your computer, next to your computer. You put one on each side, and that's the thing. You're going to need 2 lights. You don't want to put one in the middle. That's going to be a very flat light. You want one on each side. Now typically you would have one a little bit brighter than the other, but for a self-tape, a nice even wash on each side is going to be what you need. Now if you really want to up your self-taping studio game, you'll get a backlight. And what this is going to be a light that's going to be behind you and pointed at the back of your head and your shoulders. Now right now, Jennifer is not lit by a backlight. We just have the 2 front lights on her. But see what happens when we add backlight. See, her hair kind of lights up, her shoulders light up, and they separate everything from the background. Here's without, and there's with. Again, you don't have to have it, but it just gives it that professional studio look. And you can do it pretty cheaply. For another 40, 50 bucks, you can get that. And if you're going to be self-taping a lot, I think it's worth it. Now, our backlight is mounted in the ceiling. You can see it right back there in the studio. You can just get it just off camera and to either side, shining down. When we travel and audition, we usually have it off, just off of camera to the right or left, and point across, and it still lights up the side. Looks really good. Okay, I want to talk to you about light placement. And this is a big mistake people make. They put the light in the wrong place. Right now we are lighting Jen. We've turned off all the ambient light in the room and we're just lighting Jen with our 2 front lights and our backlight. I'm going to turn that off. And now she's just being lit by the light in the room. I don't expect you to do this, but a lot of people grab lamps and take the shades off, which is totally fine. You can do that. Just be careful where you place those lamps. I am right off camera left to Jen, and look what that does to her face. We put it out in front, and we still get kind of a shadow on her nose. We'd like one on both sides to kind of even it out. And people will put a light on both sides like that and move across, but you'll get a shadow on your nose on both sides. Another mistake people make is having the light underneath like that. And this is not a horror film, it's an audition, and it looks a little crazy. So you want to get it about 30 degrees off the horizon and 30 degrees off center. So Jen, point to about where our lights are. Well, that's a little, point them to where they normally would be, because ours are a little strange. So they'd be about like there and there, and that will give you a nice even wash. Here's another common mistake we get in self-tapes. People shooting in front of a window. Look what happens. This is a $1,000 camera. Can't fix it. So here we are in the lobby of my studio, and I want to point out a couple of lighting things. Now, if you don't have the time or the money to get lighting equipment, you can use natural light. So here I am using natural light from a window off to my side. And it's pretty obvious, right? This side of my face is lit up. This side doesn't look good. And this is a bad background behind me, right? Okay, now we're still in the studio, but now we've moved the camera. And now my face is looking into this open window, and the camera's in front of it. And now the background kind of drops off behind me. I'm nice and evenly lit. And it's something you can do in a pinch. You're in a hotel room or something, just open up the window and shoot on the other side of it. Now, you're not always going to have lights available to you, and you shoot in a room with fluorescent lighting, which is what we've done now. We've moved to another part of our studio that is just lit by fluorescent light. And here's another common mistake that people make. Jen is standing right under this fluorescent light, and look what it's doing to her nose, to her cheeks, to her eyebrows that are shading her eyes. It's just not pretty, but she's standing just right underneath it. So you want to back up so that the light is in front of you. So Jen, if you'll just back up. That's not good either. Keep backing up. Keep backing up. And all the way to the wall. Let's just see what happens there. Okay. So now, we don't like someone being that close to the background, but in a pinch, here's what you can do. Make sure the light that's on top of you is in front of you. So now it lights up her face evenly. We can see her eyes. We don't have those crazy light spots.
Another mistake we see is actors wanting to put themselves in the scenes, and by that they go and shoot outside for lighting or atmosphere purposes. This is wrong for a couple of reasons. One, it doesn't look professional. We never see professional actors filming outside. It's usually always in a studio. It can be distracting. We start to see the background and things moving around. It leads into bad noise as well. Wind, birds, things that you just don't want to distract and take away from your performance.
Okay, now you've got where your camera's going to be, you've got your background, and you've got your lighting. Now the other common mistake is sound. And a lot of times we can't even hear auditions, or the room is too echoey, or we can't hear the reader, or the microphone's in a bad placement. So let's talk about sound now. Now, you of course can use the microphone that's built on board your camera or your phone, and that's fine, but you got to consider where that microphone is going to be in relation to you and to your reader. If you're using a phone, sometimes you have to get the phone so close to get that shot that you can't hear your reader at all, or the sound is distorted. So you're going to want some kind of external microphone probably. Now, what a lot of actors do is they'll spend a lot of money on these lav microphones, these lavaliers that will clip onto their shirt or somewhere. The problem with these, and they sound great, and if you're just doing a spokesperson audition where it's only you talking, it's a great choice. But more often than not, your scenes are going to be with a partner. And unless you buy two of these, it's a waste of money, because your partner is also going to be needing a lav so we can hear them. Because otherwise, we hear you really loud, and then we can barely hear the reader that's off camera, right? Because they're not on the lavalier that you're using. So, unless you're buying two of them, you don't need to buy any. So what we use here at the studio is a boom mic. Now we got this online. Comes with a stand, it comes with a cord, and it'll hook into your camera, to most cameras. And it's battery operated, uses a 9-volt battery. And then what you'll want to do is just put this just out of the shot. And I don't want to get it so close to you. I want to kind of put it halfway between you and the reader, kind of like what we're doing right now. So it'll pick up you, and your reader will be picked up, but not quite as loud.
Okay, I'm gonna get technical on you for a second. When you're filming with an external mic, it goes into the DSLR and your sound shoots perfectly. But if you need to shoot on an iPhone or a smartphone, you need to make sure that you have a mic compatible for picking up smartphone sound. Now, if you don't have one compatible for it, you can use the DSLR. External mic has a TRS cable, has 2 black lines. You need to make sure that you have an adapter to go into the smartphone. Plugs in on one end, changes to a TRRS, which has 3 black lines, built for the iPhone.
Now let's talk about microphone placement. Now right now I'm the only one talking, so our microphone is pointed right up here, just right above the shot, and it's pointed right in front of me. We want to point our microphone towards our breath because that's where the sound comes out, right? But if this is a 2-person scene in a film audition or a play audition, it's not going to pick up the other actor very well. Jen, why don't you say something?
Hey Chris, how are you?
See, Jen is right next to the camera, and it's pretty quiet, right? So now we've moved the microphone about a foot in front of the camera, so it's still able to pick up me. It's pointed at me, but it will still pick up Jen a little bit better. Say something, Jen.
Hey Chris, how are you doing?
And now she's a little more in the scene. Now we have it above and not below because oftentimes people will put the microphone below the camera and then they're moving props or script pages or something, and it really picks up the sound of the script pages and hides your voice. You want to get it up in the air. So another common mistake people make is the sound of the room that they're going to be taping in. Now we're in the back of the studio now, and it's pretty echoey in here, and we're also right under an air return. And we don't pay a lot of attention to it when we're at home. Sometimes we just tune it out, but on camera you can really hear it. So if you're going to be near an air conditioner, just make sure it's turned off. So here we are in the front lobby again, and we've got the camera at the right height. We've got a microphone right here where we normally put it. We have the light in front of us, but wow, is this room echoey. Can you hear that? Now it's because I have concrete floors, I have really tall ceilings, I have a lot of glass right in front of me. There's just a lot of places for sound to bounce around. So listen to your room. If you have hardwood floors, if it's a huge, ceilings, that kind of thing, lots of bare walls, no furniture in there, it's going to be very, very echoey. So you want to do what you can to deaden the sound so it sounds a little more pretty, a little more professional. So now what we've done, of course the lighting isn't as good anymore, but we've closed the big drapes in the front window. That's going to catch a lot of that sound. I've also moved the microphone a little bit closer to me so I don't project as much to make it as echoey. I could have put some blankets and things on the floor to really deaden that sound, but really think about where you're filming and how echoey it is, because it can be very distracting, especially when your reader is behind the camera and echoing even more. Now let's talk about what you're going to wear, because colors are important. Now, depending on the audition, you don't want a costume for the role. If it's film or television, you don't want to rent a costume or anything like that. But you do want to dress to suggest the role. It's something that's suggested. If it's a professional character, wear business attire. If it's a casual character, wear something casual. But I want to talk specifically about color. Be aware of the color of your background and wear something that contrasts with that. One thing to consider is that we're dealing with cameras that have automatic apertures, and these will adjust their settings to the brightness of what's in the frame. And right now I'm pretty olive skin tone, and the biggest part of the frame is my shirt, and so it's kind of medium. Now watch what happens when I change clothes. Here I am in a white shirt. Look what it did to my skin. My colors are a lot more saturated, a lot more red. You might need to hit the white balance on your camera if you can, but otherwise you might want to stick to a neutral color. Let's see what happens again. Here I am in black. Now look how pale my skin got. And now here's a shirt that's kind of similar to the same color as the background, and I don't stand out and my shape isn't really defined. Now here's a brown shirt, and so we do separate from the background quite a bit. However, it's kind of in the same color palette as my skin tone, and so now it's all kind of one piece. Too much color, and not enough focus on my eyes and face. This is distracting. It's going to pull your eye away. We want all the attention on our eyes and face. And here we are in a color that separates me from the background, complements my skin color and my eyes, and isn't distracting. And yes, I have the same shirt in a lot of different colors. Don't judge me. Now we want to talk about framing. And this is the box that you're going to be living in during this audition. And this is the frame that we typically like to use in our auditions in the office. We call this about a 2-button. This is more like a 3-button. This is just from about the middle of the chest up to the top of Jennifer's head. And our frame stops at the top of her head. We don't have a 3-button that looks like this. A lot of people put the subject in the center of the frame and call that an audition, but you see all that wasted space on top of her head that doesn't tell any story other than we have a gray background. If that's as close as you can get, you'd want to tilt it down and put her in the upper third of your frame, upper third. Some people say shoot a very tight shot, and we get a lot of audition videos that look like that, and that's, for my blood, a little too close. It's a little too close. I want a little more of the story. We do get to see her eyes really well, but I want a little more of the story. And it's okay to cut off someone's head a little bit, but I'd like to back it up just a little bit, about like that. Now, people will ask for a wide shot, and some people will get very upset if we don't go all the way down to the bottom of the floor. But look what's happening right now. I kept my camera in the same position that we shot the audition in, and then I just tilted down. But now it's distorting Jennifer. So to get this full body shot, what we'll want to do is back the camera up. So I backed the camera up about 4 or 5 feet, and now our full body shot isn't nearly as angled. We can still zoom in and get a nice little shot of her if we're using a DSLR or a camcorder. A phone isn't going to get that kind of a shot. Okay, now we're going to talk about camera height. So this is the height of the camera from the floor. Right now, we have our camera at about the same height as Jennifer's eyes or forehead. That's really where we want to be. Now I lifted the camera about 4 inches above her head, and now it makes her look small. And Jennifer's a little height challenged anyway. She doesn't need that kind of help. This is the biggest mistake we get in camera height in self-tapes. This is below. So right now the camera is about the height of her neck. And now we're looking up at her. It makes her look super tall, for one thing, and we all know by now she's not. But we're also looking up at her, looking up her nose, looking up her chin, and it just isn't flattering. Again, we want to raise the camera to about the size of her chin.
Now let's talk about eyeline. Right now I'm looking directly at you. This is not something you want to do for your actual self-tape. It's uncomfortable for the audience to see when they're playing a scene with somebody else. Instead, put your reader just off to the side of the camera. That way when we speak, I can look at him, I can act with him, and I have somewhere to go. And it's more normal to the audience viewer to see someone talking off camera. You can put them on either side, and you can talk to multiple people in the scene. Now don't go too far off camera so we lose your performance. If I put my reader 45 degrees off to the side, you lose a lot of my performance. You see it's closed off. You don't understand what I'm seeing, and you don't see the full performance as opposed to me talking to someone right here. Now, if your hair is longer and you have bangs or something that tend to fall in front of your eyes, be aware of where the hair part is. Mine is on my left, so I want to put my reader to the right of camera. It opens up my face, you don't lose part of my eyes. Now, if I put it on the same side, you lose a lot of my performance. I have the ability to shake my hair in front of my eyes, and you lose that and it gets distracting. You want to keep it open and out of your face.
Now, Jen just spoke to you about the eye line for the reader, but let's talk about the reader. You got to have someone to do the off-camera lines, play the scene with. Now, let's try and get an actor here, okay? Significant other, roommates, parents, whatever it is, someone in the house. may be very nice people, and they're doing you a huge favor, but they're probably not an actor, and it may do you more harm than good. I've sat in this room with directors who say sometimes the lighting, sometimes the sound, sometimes and more often the reader will take them out of paying attention to the audition because they're paying attention so much to an unsuccessful performance. So see if you can get an actor, if you can, to do those off-camera lines. Now, if an actor isn't available to you in your house or when you're on vacation or whatever, you can get them on the phone, get them on Skype or FaceTime or something. Now, here's a little trick we found recently, is that when you use the reader on the phone and hold the phone by the camera, the sound is pretty terrible because the speaker on your phone is pretty tinny and doesn't have good bass tones. So what you can do is get a decent quality Bluetooth speaker and play their sound through that. And that should sound a lot better. Now, of course, it's not going to be perfect, and we are going to be able to tell that it's someone on a phone or an electronic device, but it's not going to stand out as much as a terrible actor. You really want to think about where your reader is going to stand, especially if you are not using an external microphone. Right now, we're recording our sound without the microphone straight into the onboard microphone that's living on the camera. And Jennifer is standing right next to the camera where a lot of readers usually stand. And we're going to give you a little example of a lot of typical auditions we get.
Where did you go after work today?
After work today, what do you mean?
Johnny said he was looking for you and he couldn't find you, so you obviously weren't there.
Okay, I went to a place. Okay, we're just making up this scene, and it's pretty terrible. But Jennifer's performance was fantastic. I, on the other hand, was not skilled at the improv. However, the example is how loud was her voice, the girl off camera, compared to how quiet my voice was, and I was acting at the level I would act for a film audition. So if you're only able to use an onboard camera microphone, then you need to back your reader up. The trap that happens, however, is then you start wanting to communicate to that actor that far away. So let's do that again.
Where were you after work today?
After work today,
Johnny said he looked for you and couldn't find you.
I just went home.
I don't believe that for a second.
So our improv got a little bit different, but also my performance raised a little bit because I was communicating to Jennifer, who was an additional 4 feet away from me. So just be mindful of microphone placement and how loud your reader is going to be compared to your audition. Don't worry, we're almost to the end of the video, but I do want to talk to you about file size, because you can have great cameras that will shoot on 4K or even 8K or 1080p, and you don't need it. You don't need a huge HD file. Here's why. We don't want to spend the time downloading it. We don't want to spend the time uploading it. We don't want to spend the time buffering it to watch it on whatever site it is. It can be a 480p, it can be a 720, that's fine, because we're not projecting it on a giant TV or a movie screen. We're just watching it on our computers, and so we can downgrade the size of the video a little bit to make the file size a little more manageable. Here's what I'm talking about. Depending on the length of your audition, the audition should be anywhere from 30 megabytes to maybe 300 megabytes, and that's if there's a lot of pages, 7 or 8, 9 page audition material. If it's 2 pages or so, your video should be running around 65 to 90 megabytes. Anything over that, it's overkill, and it's annoying to the casting assistants and to the casting director and the casting associates. Right, Jennifer?
Yeah. Lastly, I want to talk about following directions. Every casting office is different. They will always tell you what they want to see. Please read through everything before you film. They'll have different slate instructions, if it's first or last, if they want 1 take or 2. Any number of options you can think of, they're going to be laid out for you. Casting directors really want the best for their clients to put forward to directors, and they want you to look your best. So always reading through the instructions is step number 1, even though we're talking about it at the end.
Now I'm going to talk about getting your audition to the casting office. Now, a lot of people will just send it through an email. You don't want to do that because the file is going to be way too big for email. Gmail will say it'll send it, but it will actually attach it to a drive, and then someone else has to download it and it takes forever. Some emails just won't even send it at all. It'll just kick back and you think you sent it, but it didn't actually go anywhere. So you want to use a file transfer service. If you're not uploading it to EcoCast or Nowcasting or something like that, you want to use a file transfer service. We use either WeTransfer.com or Hightail.com. Both of them are free. They are designed to move big files from one place to another. It may take a couple of minutes, but it's going to be worth it in the long run, and they will also send you a link. So we will either get the file in our email that we can download through WeTransfer, or we can find a link that we can click on and download the material. That's what you need to do. Now, like I said at the beginning of the video, you don't have to buy all this equipment, and we've shown you ways that you can get by with what you have. But the equipment that I'm talking about is pretty nominal compared to the level of equipment you can buy for this, and it's not necessary. But I would say, if you want to up your game and not be distracting, you're going to need some lights, you're going to need a microphone, you're going to need a tripod that's going to get to the level of your height. And if you book one job by putting your video at this level, it's all paid for. Book two and you're in profit. That's it. Thanks for watching.
We hope this video was helpful to make your self-tape the best it can be.